Hi everyone, Mary again. Welcome to episode 3 of Keto Coach. This one is titled, What Do I Eat on a Ketogenic Diet? I chose this one to be next because all the time, as in every day, I get messages from people wanting to know what I eat. I usually direct them to my FitnessPal account because my diary is public there and people can see what I eat. But I also have pictures on my Keto Mary page of all my meals, and I usually include the description so you can figure out how to make it. I'm not really a recipe follower because I'm still basically a novice in the kitchen and I do not like to cook. You can look at those pictures in the descriptions and then do any amount you want. Okay, so what do you eat on a ketogenic diet? Well, basically, the carbs that you eat are going to come mostly from vegetables, but there's a few other sources of carbs that you can have. So as far as vegetables, my favorites are asparagus, broccoli, radishes, and radishes not raw because I think they're gross raw. I'm not into like that spicy taste. I cook them up in bacon grease and butter and garlic and a little salt and pepper, and they come out like little baby red potatoes, in my opinion. I think they taste like potatoes. Some people have said they don't, but I think the general consensus out there is that they're a great potato replacement. Also cauliflower, which I also use as like a potato replacement. I like to put sour cream and bacon crumbles and salt and pepper and butter, sometimes onions and shredded cheese on them. They're great. Also for vegetables like romaine lettuce to make salads, green beans, preferably wrapped in bacon, but I like them unwrapped as well. The general rule is any vegetable grown above ground is okay. And usually if it's below ground, it's not okay, but there are some exceptions to that, like the radishes. Um, so, Also, you could get carbs from nuts like almonds, pecans, walnuts. Generally, you should stay away from peanuts because they're a legume. They are inflammatory. This is another one of those, like, points of contention in the keto world. Some people are all about the peanut butter and having peanuts. And if you don't care about, possibly getting inflammation, you could include peanuts, but I don't because I don't want inflammation. But you can't, if you have to have peanut butter, like if you're unwilling to give up peanut butter, there are some brands that you can get. You just need to make sure that on the ingredients list, not the nutrition label, but on the ingredients list, that there's no sugar listed on there. And then you could, have the peanut butter, but I would still like use it very sparingly, not a lot. There are also some carbs in some cheeses and dairy, like there's carbs in sour cream and sometimes, or in cream cheese, there are carbs. I eat a lot of cream cheese. There's also carbs in heavy whipping cream, which I know most containers say 0 carbs, but I think it's like 0.6 if I remember correctly. So if you're one of those people who is really particular about tracking, then you want to make sure if you're using heavy whipping cream to, count the 0.6 in every tablespoon. So, and then the other sources of carbs are like sunflower seeds. That's, a snack that some people like. And just be careful when it comes to carbs. Don't eat things like, or I wouldn't eat things like Atkins bars or Quest bars. Those are things that are in the category of not real food. I like to eat real food. So the fewer packaged items that you eat, the better off you are. I heard someone say that real food doesn't have ingredients. They are ingredients. So just go with that. Like, you don't really need to be a big label reader on keto if you're eating what I call keto clean. So you're eating real food. If you're reading a lot of labels, you're eating a lot of processed things and probably, getting carbs that are unnecessary. Okay, what else can you eat? Well, I know you can eat bacon because that's like the big joke. It makes it seem like we, as a keto crowd, eat a lot of bacon, and I'm sure some people do. There are some weeks that go by that I don't even eat bacon. I know that's blasphemy in some circles, but I mean, I love me some bacon. Don't get me wrong, but I eat other things. But you can eat bacon and eggs, of course. Eggs are a good source of protein and fat together. You can also eat chicken with the skin. I love eating chicken skin. You can have ground beef, steak, all varieties of steak. You can have fish. I personally love salmon. I love catfish. I don't make catfish like very often at all. You can have shrimp. These are all, good protein sources, and of course, pretty much zero carbs. Try to stay away from processed meats like hot dogs and sausage. They tend to have fillers and carbs and sometimes sugar. They're cured with sugar. So regarding that question about bacon, and I'm not one of those people that has to have nitrate-free bacon. There's nitrates in several vegetables, including celery and I think radishes. Anyway, so I'm not worried about nitrates. It's not like I'm eating bacon all day, every day. And last I checked, none of us get out alive. So I'm going to have bacon, whether it has nitrates or not. I'm not afraid. So chicken, beef, in all forms. You can have pork. You can have duck and lamb, all these things, any meat basically, but try to stay away from the processed meats like, the sausages and smoked sausage and things like that, because they, may have added sugar or fillers that give you carbs. The other, so you could also eat all full fat cheeses, have cheddar cheese, cream cheese, mozzarella cheese, and you can combine all these things. So I'm not a big, like I said, I'm a novice in the kitchen. I'm not a big cooker. There's you can go online and you can, see that there's lots of recipes. I like to make, the most complicated I get is meat, cheese, and veggie dishes, like casseroles, basically. So I will put broccoli, sour cream, heavy whipping cream, eggs, cream cheese or cheddar cheese, mix it all together with meat, and I'll bake it for, on 350 for 40 minutes or something, and voila, it's a casserole. I do the same thing with beef. Just easy dishes. One of my favorite things to do is ground beef, cream cheese, onions, bacon crumbles, and mushrooms. It tastes fabulous, and it's a good source of fat and protein. Okay, so so what are some other things you want to stay away from besides the processed meats? Fruit. I get this question all the time. Well, fruit is healthy. Why can't you eat fruit? Well, fruit is nature's candy. Keyword being candy. It's full of sugar. And while it's healthy for the normal person, those of us that are obese are most likely insulin resistant. So the insulin resistant, the pre-diabetic, and the type 2 diabetic should stay away from fruit. Yes, it's tasty, and in and of itself, it's not unhealthy, but if it's going to spike the blood sugar, it's not healthy to eat for us. So in general, you want to make sure that you're eating very low carb, moderate protein, and high fat. Contrary to what some people say, I'm not afraid of protein. I love protein. You can see from my meals that I eat plenty of protein. It's pretty much included in everything. However, because I'm type 2 diabetic, and I control it with my diet, I don't do excess protein. I don't do high protein. So the way you should calculate your protein, especially if you are eating keto to reverse health issues like type 2 diabetes, and if you are trying to overcome obesity, then you should be eating 70 to 85% fat and no more than 30% protein, and keep your carbs at 5%. Basically, Finney and Volek say 65 to 80% fat. And the way that you calculate your protein needs are you can have 0.6 to 1.0 grams per pound of lean body mass. So you're going to need to know your lean body mass approximately. Anybody that tells you to eat more than 1 gram per pound of lean body mass is telling you too much if you are insulin resistant and or type 2 diabetic, or you have metabolic disorder. You need keto for therapeutic purposes as well as weight loss. So while there are groups of people out there who insist you need more protein than that, that is not for the insulin resistant, the type 2 diabetic. Those are for people that, are obsessed with muscle mass and gaining muscle. If you want to overcome obesity and you don't want to be suffering from hunger, and if you want to reverse your diabetes and get off meds, and if you want to heal your insulin sensitivity, you cannot overdo protein. So I'm sure this statement is, that I'm making is where the idea that I'm afraid of protein comes from, but I'm not afraid of protein. Protein is good. Protein is needed. But for those of us that have metabolic issues, who are very metabolically deranged, it's been over 2 years for me, and I still, my insulin sensitivity is not healed all the way. If I eat too much protein, my blood sugar will go up, and it takes me days to recover. So, of course you could do whatever you want, but the higher amounts of protein and lower amounts of fat are not for those of us that need to heal. It is for people who are no longer overweight or who are looking for single-digit body fat and looking to build lots of muscle. Those people are not my audience. I'm looking to help the obese and the people with diabetes who want to get off meds and who don't want to suffer diabetic symptoms anymore. That's who I'm talking to. So now that you know what you can eat, let's talk about how much. There's this idea out there, I know, calories in, calories out. And I don't really subscribe to that. I don't count calories because I just don't care. I'm not a calorie counter. I've done that my entire life and it never served me well. So I just count my carbs and I make sure that my protein is reasonable and moderate, and I make sure my fat is high. It's almost always between the 70 to 80% range of my calories. So here's the thing. There is no too much fat, okay? It's not too much fat that causes you to stall or gain weight on this way of eating. It's too much food. And you could call that too many calories. You could call it whatever you want. But it boils down to too much food. And that's one of the biggest mistakes that people make on a keto diet, is they think it's kind of a free-for-all and they eat too much food. So I'm here to tell you that if you are, especially if you're fat adapted, if you're new to keto, there's some leeway. But if you're fat adapted and you're eating 3 meals a day and snacks, you are eating too much food. Okay, so it's not too much fat, it's too much food. And people usually think they're eating too much fat because when they increase their fat, they're usually increasing carbs or protein at the same time, which leads me to my next point, which is, this idea that people get really mad and irate out there in the keto world. Don't drink your fats. You shouldn't drink your fats. BPC will make you gain weight, blah, blah, blah. No. Drinking your fat is a brilliant way to get your fats in if that's something you struggle with. It's a brilliant way to get your fats in without increasing your carbs and without increasing your protein. I personally don't have trouble getting my fats in. I can't really relate to that problem. But if you're one of those people who can't seem to get their fat high enough, then BPC, the bulletproof coffee, or a bulletproof hot chocolate, basically a high fat drink, is a really good way to get your fat in, and that fat will contribute to your level of satiation and probably keep you satisfied for hours. Okay, so the exception to eating too much food is your first week on keto. When you first start, the most important thing, in my opinion, especially if you are a hardcore carb and sugar addict like I was, the most important thing is getting through those cravings so that you don't cave. And how you do that is you eat a lot of food and a lot of high fat that first week. I don't even think, I don't care about how much food you eat or if you overeat that first week. The most important thing is to get past those physical cravings. Once you're past those physical cravings, then you can start working on the problems in your head related to wanting to continue to eat sweets. And that's going to be a whole nother episode. But basically your first week, it's okay to eat more food. After you get rid of those physical cravings, then you can start looking at eating less food and not eating by a clock. Don't eat breakfast just because it's breakfast time. And somewhere, in our life, we've been told breakfast is the most important meal of the day. It jumpstarts your metabolism. No, it doesn't. Once you eat, you elevate your blood sugar. So back to the idea of the too much fat making you fat. That's not true. It's too much food. And the way I've seen it best described is from an article that I saw on someone's blog. And what they said was, understand that eating heightens the glucose level in your blood, triggering the release of insulin. Insulin is the main trigger for fat storage. The insulin does its job and returns to a basal level after some time has passed. If you are constantly eating and thus constantly spiking your glycogen levels, your body never gets a chance to return your insulin to its basal level. Over time, this constant daily influx of insulin can cause insulin resistance. Insulin resistance over time can lead to obesity and type 2 diabetes. You need to allow for some insulin downtime. So, what does that mean? It means don't eat all day. There is no eat 5 or 6 meals every 2 to 3 hours. You don't have to start your day with breakfast. You don't need breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks. It does not help your metabolism. All it does is keep your blood sugar in an elevated state, which if you're insulin resistant and type 2 diabetic is a big fat no. You don't want that. You want your blood sugar to normalize and level out and be normal. And you do that by only eating when you're hungry. And, unfortunately, most of us, when we begin, have no idea what true hunger is because all we've ever done is eat in response to cravings. Our body wants more sugar and we called that hunger and we ate. I ate like pretty much all the time, all day long when prior to keto because I thought I was always hungry, but that's not hunger. That was cravings. So you don't want to, bring your bad habits from your carb and sugar days over to keto. Keto, just because the food is healthy and low carb does not mean we can still eat all day. You cannot just stuff your face with as much food as you want. You have to be reasonable about your portion sizes. So just remember that. I'll do another episode on what is real hunger, because there is a difference between real hunger and head hunger. But basically, if you are at the fat adapted stage, you probably won't be hungry for solid food more than twice in a 24-hour period. You could start your day with your coffee or not. But if you have a BPC coffee in the morning, this is what I do. I have around 6:30 a.m. I have my coffee, and then I'm usually not hungry for my first meal until 1 o'clock, sometimes later. Some days I only have one meal and coffee. Most days I have 2 meals. But the first one is the bigger meal. It's usually prior to my working out, and the second meal is the smaller meal. That's not always that way, but it is. And then there's certain times for women, Shark Week, there's some days where you want more food. And when I have that going on, I'll eat more food. I don't care. I'll eat 3 meals if I want to. I'll eat 4 meals if I want to. And I've never experienced any detrimental effects of that, like as in weight gain or feeling yucky. I just, I listen to my body and I give it what it needs. All right. So there it is. The foods you can eat and why you should eat them and how often you should eat them. I hope you have a great keto week, and I'll see you next week for episode 4.